The darkness between stars suddenly tore open like fabric being ripped apart. 300 alien warships appeared out of nowhere, their metal hulls shining in the distant starlight. They had traveled faster than light itself to reach this place, and now they floated at the edge of a solar system that contained a planet called Earth. Commander Vexral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. His 4 eyes scanned the glowing screens in front of him. He felt satisfied. This mission would be easy. His people, the Korthax, had visited this system 4,000 years ago. Back then, the humans who lived on Earth were primitive and weak. The Korthax had destroyed their cities without effort and left them to die. It had been so easy that the Empire barely remembered doing it. "Give me a report," Vexral ordered. His words came out as clicking sounds, but his ship's computer translated them for his crew to understand. "All ships are here, Commander," his officer replied. "We are at the outer edge of the system. The third planet from the Sun is still in the zone where life can exist. We are not detecting any advanced technology yet." Vexral's mouthparts clicked together in what passed for a smile among his kind. The old records showed that humans had been using basic engines and simple radio signals when his ancestors arrived. Even if they had advanced over 4,000 years, they would still be no match for the Korthax Empire. This would be a simple task of taking the resources the Empire needed. The system was full of valuable metals and rare elements. "Move forward," Vexral commanded. "Use standard attack formation. Prepare to bomb their cities from orbit. I want this finished within 3 days." The massive fleet began moving toward the inner solar system. Their engines pushed them forward at incredible speed. Though it would still take several hours to reach Earth, Vexral was patient. He had waited his whole life for a command this important. Conquering Earth would make him famous. It might even earn him a place on the High Council that ruled the Empire. As the fleet moved past the 8th planet in the system, Vexral looked at the old records again. The images showed crude buildings, simple spacecraft that barely left the atmosphere, and creatures that looked fragile and short-lived. The first Korthax expedition had killed about 30% of Earth's population. Before deciding the planet was beaten, then the Empire had left to find better targets elsewhere. "Commander," his sensor officer interrupted, "we are seeing strange readings from the asteroid belt." "Strange how?" Vexral asked, only slightly interested. "Some asteroids have been moved from where they should be naturally. It might be mining operations, but the scale is bigger than we would expect from a developing civilization." Vexral thought about this for a moment. Maybe they learned basic spaceflight. It does not matter. Keep moving forward. But something bothered him as they crossed past the 6th planet. The silence was complete and total. A civilization that could mine asteroids should be filling space with radio signals and communications. There should be cargo ships, satellites, the constant noise of a living world. Instead, there was nothing but quiet. "Sensor officer, expand your search. Look for any artificial signals." "Already searching continuously, Commander. There is nothing. No radio, no laser communications, no quantum signals. The system appears empty." A cold feeling ran through Vexral's body. It was an old instinct his species had evolved millions of years ago. Silence in nature often meant a predator was hiding nearby. But that was foolish thinking. These were primitives who could barely split atoms when his ancestors last visited. They could not possibly threaten the mighty Korthax Empire. "Perhaps they destroyed themselves," his tactical officer suggested. "Primitive species often do. Nuclear war, biological weapons, environmental collapse. We might find nothing but ruins. That would be disappointing but not unusual." Vexral had hoped for at least some resistance to make the conquest worth recording in history. Finding an empty grave would make the achievement less impressive. The fleet crossed past the 4th planet, a small red world covered in dust. Still nothing. No challenge, no communication, no signs of life. Just endless silence, and the distant blue glow of Earth growing larger on the screens. "Approaching firing range," the weapons officer announced. "All ships report. Weapons are charged and ready." Vexral straightened in his command chair, preparing to give the order that would seal Earth's fate. 4,000 years ago, his ancestors had broken this world. Now he would finish what they started. The primitive humans would learn what so many others had learned before them. The Korthax Empire was unstoppable. All ships, prepare to fire on my command. Commander, emergency. The sensor officer's voice carried panic that Vex Ral had never heard before. Multiple massive distortions detected all around us. Vex Ral's eyes went wide as the tactical screen suddenly filled with new contacts. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Ships were appearing from nowhere, materializing from some kind of invisibility technology that should not exist. The fleet was surrounded, trapped in a box by vessels that registered as much larger and more powerful than anything the Korthax possessed. The empty space around them had transformed in seconds into a killing field. Human ships appeared on all sides, above and below, forming perfect geometric patterns that left no escape route. It was a military deployment of stunning skill and planning. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vex Ral felt something he had only read about in ancient texts, something his species thought they had evolved beyond centuries ago. He felt true fear. His bridge erupted into chaos. Alarm systems screamed warnings across every frequency. Officers shouted reports over each other, trying to process the impossible data flooding their sensors. The quiet approach to an undefended planet had become a nightmare in the span of heartbeats. "Report status immediately," Vex Ral shouted, trying to maintain control despite the terror clawing at his mind. "Sir, contacts appearing on every side." The sensor officer's hands flew across his console. "Multiple thousands of vessels detected. They are using stealth technology we have never encountered before. They were hiding there all along, and we never saw them. 3,000 kilometers above Earth's surface, hidden within technology that bent light and suppressed gravity, the United Earth Defense Station Vigilance hung motionless in space. The massive structure had been humanity's silent guardian for the past 800 years. It was one of dozens scattered throughout the solar system, all watching and waiting for this exact moment. Captain Daniel Morrison stood in the observation deck with his hands clasped behind his back. He watched the alien fleet's approach on the holographic display floating in front of him. At 63 years old, he had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. He had trained for an enemy that might never come. Now they were here, and every simulation, every drill, every sleepless night would finally matter. "Sir, the Korthax fleet has crossed Mars orbit," Lieutenant Kevin Hayes reported from the tactical station. "They are maintaining their standard attack formation. They have not detected any of our assets." "Good," Daniel said quietly. "Maintain complete silence across all platforms. Let them come closer." Around him, the command center hummed with controlled activity. Officers monitored countless feeds from sensor networks scattered across the entire solar system. Every asteroid, every ice fragment in the distant Kuiper belt, every seemingly natural object the aliens had passed, contained hidden instruments. Those instruments had tracked the alien approach with perfect clarity since they entered the system. Commander Amy Rodriguez approached from the tactical planning section. Her dark eyes reflected the blue light of the displays. She had been Daniel's second-in-command for 12 years, and he trusted her completely. "They are acting exactly as the historical records suggested they would," Amy said, pulling up ancient footage on her personal display. "Arrogant, overconfident, expecting primitives. They have not even raised their defensive shields to full power." Daniel nodded, watching the alien formation advance. The Korthax had no idea they were flying into a trap that humanity had spent 4,000 years preparing. When their probe had arrived in 2025, it had destroyed several major cities and killed nearly 1 billion people before leaving. Humanity had been helpless back then. Primitive nuclear weapons had proven useless against the probe's shields. Earth had been at the aliens' mercy, and they had shown none. But they had made one critical mistake. They had left survivors. "Sir, incoming transmission from Fleet Admiral Chen," the communications officer announced. "She is requesting status confirmation from all defensive positions." "Put her through," Daniel ordered. The holographic display shimmered, and Admiral Lisa Chen's image appeared before him. At 58 years old, she commanded the United Earth Defense Forces, with strategic brilliance that had earned her the position over dozens of more senior candidates. Behind her, Daniel could see the bridge of the flagship Defiance, humanity's largest and most powerful warship. "Captain Morrison," Lisa greeted him. "Status report? Station vigilance is at full combat readiness, Admiral. All stealth systems operating normally. The enemy has no indication we exist. Also, Clam. Amana storing. Clama. Excellent. The same reports are coming in from all defensive positions. The Korthax fleet is completely blind to our preparations." Lisa's expression hardened. "They think we are still the primitives they massacred 4,000 years ago. They are about to learn the truth." Daniel felt a grim smile cross his face. Humanity had spent 4 millennia preparing for this moment. After the probe's attack, the survivors had united under a single purpose. They would ensure that if the Korthax ever returned, they would face not helpless victims but an enemy that had evolved far beyond them. The years that followed had seen the greatest leap in human advancement in history. Scientists had analyzed what little data they could gather from the probe's energy signatures. Engineers had pushed the boundaries of physics to develop faster-than-light detection systems, stealth technology, and weapons that could crack planets. Millions had dedicated their lives to a future they would never see, building the silent armada that now surrounded the unsuspecting alien fleet. "Admiral, the enemy is approaching optimal engagement range," Amy reported. "Their formation is tight with overlapping fields of fire. They are not expecting any resistance." "Perfect," Lisa said. "All ships, maintain stealth protocols until my signal. Let them get close enough to see Earth clearly. Let them remember what they came to destroy. Then we show them what we have become." Daniel watched as the Korthax fleet continued forward. Their weapons were charging. Their targeting systems were likely locking onto Earth's major cities right now. They would be planning trajectories for orbital bombardment, calculating casualties, dividing the resources they would take. They had done this 100 times before, to 100 different worlds. But Earth was different. Earth remembered. "Sir, detecting weapons activation across the enemy fleet," the tactical officer reported. "They are preparing to fire on Earth." Daniel's jaw tightened. Even now, after 4,000 years, the memory of that first attack burned in humanity's collective consciousness. Entire cities turned to glass. Billions dead in minutes, survivors hiding in bunkers while alien weapons turned their world into a graveyard. Children growing up in a world that knew it could be destroyed at any moment by enemies from the stars. Never again. Those 2 words had become humanity's mantra, carved into monuments, whispered by every generation as they built the defenses that would protect their world. "Admiral Chen, they are preparing to engage Earth," Daniel reported, his voice steady despite the anger burning inside him. Lisa's expression remained calm and controlled. "Then it is time. Signal all ships. Prepare to decloak on my mark." Humanity has been silent long enough. Throughout the solar system, in orbit around every planet, hidden among asteroid fields and nestled in the shadows of moons, thousands of human warships received the signal. Crews that had trained for generations prepared to reveal themselves. Weapons systems that had never been fired in actual combat powered up to full capacity. Shield generators capable of withstanding temperatures found in the cores of stars hummed to life. The trap was about to spring shut. "This is Admiral Chen to all United Earth Defense Forces." Lisa's voice echoed across encrypted quantum channels that the aliens could not detect or intercept. 4,000 years ago, the Korthax Empire came to our world and showed us no mercy. They killed our ancestors, burned our cities, and left us for dead. They expected us to fade into history, another forgotten species crushed beneath their empire's expansion. Daniel could hear the steel in her voice, the righteous fury of a species that had spent millennia preparing for justice. But we did not fade. We did not forget. We built this armada in silence, ship by ship, generation by generation. We prepared for this day, knowing it might never come. But it has come. The enemy has returned, expecting to finish what they started 4,000 years ago. Instead, They will learn what humanity does to those who threaten our home. Daniel felt a surge of pride as he looked at his crew. These were men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. They were descendants of survivors who had sworn an oath that their world would never be defenseless again. Every person on every ship carried that oath in their hearts. Today, we remind the galaxy that Earth remembers, Lisa continued. Today, humanity shows what we have become. All ships, execute Protocol Awakening. Let us introduce ourselves to our old enemies. Daniel turned to his tactical officer. Drop all stealth protocols, raise shields to maximum, activate all weapon systems. Show them what 4,000 years of preparation looks like. Commander Vexral stared at the tactical display in complete disbelief. His bridge had erupted into chaos within seconds. Alarm systems screamed across every frequency, their urgency reflecting the impossibility of what the sensors were reporting. The empty space around his fleet had transformed in an instant into a nightmare bristling with unknown vessels. "Report immediately," Vexral demanded, his voice cracking with a mixture of fury and fear that he had never felt before. "What is happening, sir?" Contacts appearing on all sides. The sensor officer's hands flew across his console, desperately trying to process the flood of data. "Multiple thousands of vessels detected. They are using some form of stealth technology we have never encountered before. They were there the entire time, and we never saw them." The main display shifted to show the Korthax fleet's position. They were surrounded in 3 dimensions, boxed into a formation that left no avenue of escape. The human ships formed perfect geometric patterns, each vessel positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. It was military deployment of stunning sophistication, the kind that should take millions of years to develop. "This cannot be real," Vexral whispered, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The primitives barely had spaceflight when we last came here. This level of coordination and technology is impossible to achieve in such a short time." "Commander, we are being scanned," the communications officer reported, fear clear in his voice. "Multiple active sensor locks from the human vessels. They have targeting solutions on every single ship in our fleet." Vexral's mind raced frantically. This had to be a trick. Some kind of elaborate holographic projection designed to intimidate them into retreat. The alternative was unthinkable. These were supposed to be primitives, barely evolved creatures that his ancestors had crushed without effort 4,000 years ago. "Analyze those ships immediately," he ordered, trying to maintain his composure. "Give me their capabilities right now." The tactical officer worked for several tense moments before looking up with an expression that Vexral had never seen on a Korthax face before. It was absolute terror. "Sir, the human vessels are reading at power levels 3 to 4 times higher than our heaviest battleships. Their shield emissions suggest multi-layered defensive systems we do not have the technology to replicate. And their weapons." He paused, his voice shaking. "Sir, we are detecting weapon signatures that match theoretical designs for quantum disruption, cannons, and gravitational shear projectors. Those are extinction-level weapons that we have only seen in scientific papers." Vexral felt his legs weaken beneath him. Those weapon types existed only in the most advanced theoretical research of the Korthax Empire's greatest scientists. They had been deemed impossible to miniaturize, too energy-intensive to deploy on anything smaller than a moon-sized installation. Yet these humans appeared to have mounted them on ships barely a kilometer long. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," the communications officer announced. "They are hailing us on all standard frequencies. Audio and visual feed ready." "Put it through," Vexral said, forcing himself to stand straight. Whatever happened next, he would face it as a commander of the Korthax Empire, with whatever dignity he could maintain. The main display shimmered and changed. Vexral found himself looking at a human face for the first time in his life. The creature was male, with graying hair and eyes that held cold, calculating intelligence. He wore a dark uniform marked with insignia that clearly indicated high rank. Behind him, a bridge hummed with activity, displaying technology that made the Eternal Dominion systems look primitive by comparison. "I am Admiral Greg Patterson, of the United Earth Defense Forces," the human said. The words were instantly translated by the Korthax systems. You have entered our territory with weapons charged and hostile intent. You are surrounded and outgunned. I am authorized to offer you this one opportunity to surrender your vessels and submit to inspection. Refuse, and we will defend our home with all necessary force. Vexral heard shocked chittering from his crew all around him. A primitive species, one that should have been extinct or cowering in caves, was demanding their surrender. It was beyond humiliating. It was impossible to comprehend. This is Commander Vexral of the Korthax Imperial Fleet, he responded, forcing his voice to remain steady. Your world was conquered 4,000 cycles ago by our ancestors. You exist only because we allow it. Stand down immediately, or we will finish what was begun. Admiral Patterson's expression did not change, but something in his eyes became colder and harder. Commander, I do not think you understand your situation. 4,000 years ago, your people came to Earth and killed 1 billion of our ancestors. You burned our cities, destroyed our infrastructure, and left us for dead. You expected us to fade away, to become another forgotten footnote in your empire's long history of conquest. The human leaned forward slightly, and Vexral felt an instinctive urge to step backward, even though they were separated by millions of kilometers of space. But you made a critical mistake, Patterson continued, his voice carrying an edge that sent chills through Vexral's body. You left survivors. And those survivors spent the next 4,000 years preparing for your return. Every generation built and tested and refined our capabilities. We developed technologies you have never dreamed of. We unified our entire species under a single purpose, to ensure that if you ever came back, you would face not victims, but equals. Equals. Vexral clicked his mandibles in what he hoped sounded like amusement, rather than the nervous terror he actually felt. You are primitives playing with technology you barely understand. The Korthax Empire has conquered 100 worlds. Our military might is legendary across the galaxy. You cannot possibly... Obsolete, Patterson interrupted flatly. Commander, I am going to demonstrate something for you. Consider it a courtesy, given what is about to happen if you choose poorly. The Admiral made a simple gesture, and on Vexral's tactical display, one of the human ships powered up a weapon system. Energy readings spiked to levels that should have required a capital ship's entire power output. Yet this vessel was smaller than a Korthax frigate. That vessel is the destroyer. Retribution, Patterson explained calmly. It is one of our smaller warships, roughly half the size of your frigates. Watch carefully what it does to that asteroid, approximately 200,000 kilometers from your current position. On the display, a beam of coherent energy lanced out from the human destroyer. It crossed the immense distance in an instant, striking the asteroid with perfect accuracy. The asteroid, roughly 5 kilometers in diameter and composed of solid iron and stone, simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field, no scattered fragments. The beam had disintegrated the entire mass at a molecular level, converting billions of tons of matter instantly into superheated plasma that dispersed into space. Vexral's bridge fell completely silent. That kind of power should have been physically impossible. The energy requirements alone exceeded anything in the entire Korthax arsenal. A weapon like that could destroy cities, level mountains, crack continents, and the humans had just demonstrated it casually, as if it were nothing more than a training exercise. We have 3,000 ships in this system, Commander, Patterson said quietly, letting the implications sink in. Each one is more advanced than anything your empire has ever built. We have been tracking your fleet since you entered our space. We have analyzed your weapons, your shields, your communications protocols. We know exactly how to defeat you, down to the smallest tactical detail. You are bluffing, Vexral said. But his voice lacked any conviction. The words sounded hollow even to his own ears. Then test us, Patterson replied with a cold smile. Charge your weapons and open fire. See what happens when you do. I promise you, Commander. It will be educational. Briefly, Vexral's tactical officer turned to look at him with wide, frightened eyes. Sir, what are your orders? For a long moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Vex Ral considered his options. He could order an attack, rely on the Korthax Empire's proven military doctrine, and centuries of successful conquest. But the tactical analysis was brutally clear, and could not be ignored. They were outmatched in every conceivable category. The humans had superior positioning, vastly superior numbers, and horrifyingly superior technology that seemed to mock everything the Korthax had achieved. But to surrender to primitives? To creatures that should have been extinct or still living in caves? The humiliation would echo through Korthax history for millions of years. His name would become synonymous with cowardice and failure. His bloodline would be disgraced for generations to come. He would rather die than face such shame. "Commander," Admiral Patterson said, and something in his tone made Vex Ral look up sharply. "I know exactly what you are thinking right now. You are wondering if your honor can survive surrender. Let me save you the internal debate and make this very clear. Your honor died the moment you entered this system with the intent to massacre the descendants of the people your ancestors murdered 4,000 years ago. You have exactly 60 seconds to signal your surrender. Or we will interpret any delay as hostile action and respond accordingly. Choose quickly, because I will not offer this opportunity again." Vex Ral looked around his bridge at the crew that had served him faithfully for decades. Officers who had trusted his leadership, who had followed him into battle countless times. They were looking to him now for the decision that would determine whether they lived or died today. He thought of the Empire, of the billions of Korthax across dozens of conquered worlds who had believed in their military supremacy, who had built their civilization on the certainty that they were the dominant force in this region of space. Then he looked at the tactical display again, and saw the asteroid that no longer existed, disintegrated by a weapon from a species his people had dismissed as primitives. Commander Vex Ral had barely finished giving the surrender order when everything went wrong. 3 Korthax battleships on the outer edge of the fleet, commanded by officers who valued pride over survival, suddenly ignored the surrender command and opened fire on the nearest human vessels. "Cancel that order." Captain Thalric's voice crackled over the fleet communication channel, filled with rage and defiance. "We do not surrender to primitives. We are warriors of the Korthax Empire. All loyal ships, engage the enemy immediately." "No, stop!" Vex Ral shouted desperately, but it was already too late. Bright streams of plasma and solid projectiles lanced out from the 3 rebellious battleships, targeting the human destroyers that had begun approaching to conduct the boarding operations. For a brief moment, Vex Ral felt a small surge of hope rising in his chest. Perhaps Thalrek was right after all. Perhaps their weapons would prove effective against these humans. Perhaps this entire situation was just an elaborate bluff designed to avoid actual combat. Perhaps they could still win this. The hope died instantly. The human destroyers did not attempt to evade the incoming fire. They did not maneuver or take defensive positions. Their shields simply flared briefly, creating a shimmer of iridescent energy that absorbed the incoming plasma bolts and projectiles without any visible strain. The plasma that should have melted through armor plating simply dissipated harmlessly. The solid projectiles that should have cracked hulls wide open bounced off the shields like rain droplets hitting stone. Then the humans returned fire, and Vex Ral witnessed something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. It was not like any battle he had ever seen before. There was no prolonged exchange of fire, no tactical maneuvering, no back-and-forth testing of defenses. The human response was immediate, surgical, and utterly devastating. 3 beams of concentrated energy, each one originating from a different human destroyer, struck the rebellious Korthax battleships at exactly the same moment. The defensive shields that had protected Korthax vessels for centuries collapsed instantly, overloaded by power levels they were never designed to withstand. The beams continued through armor plating that had been forged in the heart of a dwarf star, metal that should have been impervious to anything short of a direct nuclear explosion. The 3 battleships simply came apart. But it was not an explosion. Vex Ral realized with growing horror. They were being disintegrated. The molecular bonds that held the ships together were failing catastrophically as the human weapons tore through them at a fundamental level. 3 massive battleships, each one crewed by over 2,000 Korthax warriors, ceased to exist in less than 3 seconds. There were no survivors, no escape pods, no debris larger than microscopic dust. They simply stopped being. The silence on the fleet communication channel was absolute and crushing. "Does anyone else wish to test our patience?" Admiral Patterson's voice cut through the quiet like a knife through flesh. "I can continue this demonstration all day, Commander Vex Raul, but I would greatly prefer not to kill any more of your people unnecessarily. The choice is yours. All ships, stand down immediately," Vex Raul ordered, putting every ounce of authority he possessed into his voice. "Anyone who disobeys will answer to me personally, assuming the humans leave anything of them to prosecute. Drop all shields and power down all weapons systems right now." This time, there was no resistance. The tactical display showed the entire Korthax fleet complying immediately. Ships going dark, as they surrendered to the overwhelming force surrounding them. No one wanted to share the fate of those 3 battleships. But the situation was not over yet. New contacts began appearing on the tactical display, ships that Vex Raul had forgotten about in the chaos of the moment. These were Korthax scout vessels that had been positioned throughout the solar system earlier, conducting reconnaissance operations while the main fleet approached Earth. They had witnessed the surrender from their distant positions and apparently decided to mount their own attack. "Sir," detecting 12 scout vessels accelerating directly toward Earth, the sensor officer reported with undisguised dread. "They are ignoring our surrender order completely. It appears they are attempting to complete the original orbital bombardment mission." Vex Raul's blood ran cold with horror. The scout ships, smaller and faster than the battleships, were racing toward Earth at maximum acceleration. Their captains had clearly decided that dying in a glorious assault on the human homeworld was preferable to the unbearable shame of surrender. They were willing to sacrifice themselves if it meant completing their mission. "This is Admiral Lisa Chen." A new voice cut across the human communication channels. "All United Earth defensive units. The enemy scout vessels are to be intercepted with maximum force. They are not to reach weapons range of Earth under any circumstances whatsoever." Vex Raul watched in fascination mixed with horror as the human response unfolded with the precision of a perfectly choreographed performance. The human fleet did not panic or rush to intercept. Instead, a completely new formation of vessels revealed themselves from positions between Mars and Earth. Ships that had been hidden specifically for this exact contingency. These new vessels were different from the destroyers and cruisers that surrounded the main Korthax fleet. They were sleeker and more streamlined, with hull configurations that clearly suggested incredible speed and acceleration capabilities. The tactical display identified them as human interceptors, and Vex Raul immediately understood their purpose with a sinking feeling in his chest. The interceptors moved with a speed that seemed to defy the laws of physics, as Vex Raul understood them. They crossed millions of kilometers in mere minutes, their drives leaving visible trails of distorted space-time in their wake. The Korthax scouts, already traveling at maximum velocity, were overtaken as easily as a hunting falcon overtaking a common sparrow. What followed was not a battle in any meaningful sense. It was a clinical execution. The human interceptors did not waste time with fancy maneuvering or tactical positioning. They simply placed themselves directly ahead of each Korthax scout vessel and opened fire with weapons that were clearly designed for precision rather than raw destruction. Engine sections were severed cleanly from hulls with laser-focused beams of incredible accuracy. Weapons systems were surgically removed without damaging surrounding structures. Life support systems remained completely intact, but the scouts were transformed from functional warships into helpless drifting containers in a matter of seconds. "All Korthax scout vessels have been neutralized," Admiral Chen reported in a calm, professional tone. 0 human casualties reported. No threat to Earth remains. Vex Raul slumped in his command chair, feeling utterly defeated. The entire engagement, from the initial rebellion of the 3 battleships to the neutralization of the scout vessels, had taken less than 10 minutes of real time. The Korthax Imperial Fleet, 300 warships representing the accumulated military might of an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds, had been completely and utterly defeated. The humans had not even broken a sweat during the process. Commander Vex Ral. Admiral Patterson's image reappeared on the main display. I believe we have now demonstrated sufficient capability. Are there any other vessels in your fleet that need additional convincing, or can we finally proceed with the boarding operations as originally planned? No more resistance, Vex Ral said, his voice hollow and empty. We are thoroughly beaten. Utterly and completely defeated. Good, Patterson replied. And his expression softened very slightly. For what it is worth, Commander, I genuinely respect your decision to surrender when you did. You saved countless lives today, both on your side and ours. History will remember that choice, even if your empire chooses not to. Over the next several hours, human boarding parties systematically secured every single Korthax vessel in the fleet. The process was remarkably efficient and professional, with the humans showing a level of military discipline that actually rivaled the Korthax's own legendary standards. They confiscated all weapons, secured crew quarters, and installed sophisticated monitoring systems to ensure complete compliance with the surrender terms. Vex Ral found himself confined to his own quarters aboard the Eternal Dominion, watched constantly by two human soldiers whose weapons he did not recognize, but whose professional competence he could not possibly doubt. Through his small viewport, he could see the massive human fleet maintaining perfect positions around them. A constant reminder of how thoroughly and completely his mission had failed. A soft chime at his door announced an unexpected visitor. Admiral Lisa Chen entered his quarters, accompanied by a security detail that positioned themselves strategically around the room. She was shorter than Vex Ral had expected from her holographic image, but her physical presence somehow filled the entire space with quiet, unshakable authority. She carried herself like someone who had spent an entire lifetime earning command through merit, rather than being born into it through privilege. Commander Vex Ral, she greeted him with formal courtesy. I am Admiral Lisa Chen, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Forces. I wanted to speak with you personally before we proceed any further with the surrender process. Vex Ral stood as straight as his dejected posture would allow, attempting to maintain whatever small dignity remained to him after such a comprehensive defeat. Admiral Chen, I assume you have come to discuss the specific terms of our surrender? Actually, I came to ensure you fully understand your current situation, Lisa replied calmly. Your empire dispatched this fleet specifically to finish what your ancestors started 4,000 years ago. You came here expecting to find either primitives or ruins. Instead, you found an advanced civilization that has spent 4 millennia preparing specifically for your return. Do you truly understand what that means? It means we badly underestimated your capabilities, Vex Ral said bitterly. It means the intelligence data we possessed was dangerously outdated and completely incorrect. It means I have failed catastrophically in my mission. FT1, it means much more than just that, Lisa said firmly. She walked to the viewport, looking out at the captured and helpless Korthax fleet floating in space. It means that Earth, and by extension all of humanity, is no longer a valid target for conquest. We are no longer prey to be hunted. We are now a significant power that must be respected and, if your empire possesses any wisdom at all, appropriately feared. She turned back to face him directly, and in her eyes Vex Ral saw the accumulated determination of 4,000 years of preparation, of countless generations that had lived and died for exactly this moment. I am going to send you home, Commander, Lisa continued in a measured tone. You and your entire crew. You will return to your empire with your ships, your weapons, and most of your dignity still intact. And you will personally deliver a very specific message to your leaders. What message? Vex Ral asked quietly. 3 weeks later, the Korthax fleet limped slowly toward the edge of Earth's solar system under constant human escort. Their weapon systems had been permanently disabled, with technology the Korthax engineers could not understand or repair. Their faster-than-light drives had been fitted with sophisticated human-built monitoring devices that would immediately alert Earth if any hostile action was ever attempted in the future. They were being released like children who had been caught doing something extremely dangerous and were now being sent home with a severe warning. Commander Vex Ral stood alone on his bridge, watching Earth slowly recede into the distance, on the main view screen. The beautiful blue-green world that had been his intended target now represented something completely different in his mind. It was a living testament to what a determined species could achieve when driven by the painful memory of loss and the absolute determination to never again be helpless victims. "Sir, the humans are sending us a final signal," his communications officer reported quietly. "It is Admiral Chen." Lisa Chen's image appeared on the main display one last time. Behind her, the bridge of the mighty Defiance hummed with the controlled activity of a well-trained crew. She looked tired but deeply satisfied, like someone who had finally completed a monumental task that had been weighing heavily on them for their entire life. "Commander Vex Ral, you are now clear to activate your faster-than-light drives once you have passed beyond the heliopause boundary," she said in a formal tone. "Your ship's systems have been fully repaired and resupplied with everything you need. You have sufficient provisions to reach the nearest Korthax outpost without any difficulty." "Thank you, Admiral," Vexral replied with genuine sincerity. "That level of consideration is far more generous than we deserve, given our original hostile intentions toward your world. We are not doing this out of generosity or kindness," Lisa said with complete honesty. "We are doing it because we need you and your crew to deliver our message to your empire, completely intact and unharmed. Make absolutely no mistake about this, Commander. If you had chosen to fight to the last ship instead of surrendering, we would have gladly obliged your death wish and destroyed your entire fleet. But you chose wisdom and survival over pointless pride. And that decision is worth something to us." Vexral nodded slowly, accepting the brutal truth of her words. "I have a question, if you will permit me to ask it. The incredible technology you have developed, the devastating weapons, the faster-than-light drives, the impenetrable shields. How long did it truly take to achieve all of this? 4,000 years seems almost impossible for such radical advancement." Lisa smiled, but it was a cold expression devoid of warmth. "It was not easy at all. The first 1,000 years after your probe's attack were absolutely the hardest period. We had to completely unify our entire world and eliminate all the conflicts and divisions that had separated us for millennia. We had to build a single unified civilization that was focused entirely on a single long-term goal. Then we had to painstakingly reverse-engineer everything we could learn from the energy signatures and radiation patterns that your probe left behind in our atmosphere. Every single generation built carefully upon the achievements and knowledge of the previous one. Children grew up fully aware that they were preparing humanity to face a threat that might not return during their own lifetime. But why go to such extraordinary lengths?" Vexral asked, genuinely struggling to understand. "Why dedicate your entire civilization's resources and energy to preparing for an enemy that might realistically never return to your world?" "Because we had absolutely no other choice," Lisa replied with fierce intensity. "Because when you are faced with the very real potential of complete extinction for your entire species, you either adapt and become stronger, or you die and fade into history. We collectively chose to adapt. We chose to become stronger and more capable than our potential enemies. And now, 4,000 years later, here we stand. The prey has successfully become the predator." The display shifted to show the gathered human fleet in all its terrifying glory. Thousands upon thousands of advanced warships, each one representing decades of careful work and preparation, each one crewed by highly trained men and women who had spent their entire lives preparing for combat they genuinely hoped would never come. It was simultaneously beautiful and absolutely terrifying to behold. "There is something else you should know and report to your leaders," Lisa continued in a measured tone. "The military technology you have witnessed and experienced here. The weapons that easily destroyed your battleships. The shields that casually brushed aside your attacks as if they were nothing. This represents only what we are currently willing to show potential adversaries. Our most advanced weapon systems and defensive capabilities remain completely classified and hidden away, reserved specifically for threats we deem even more serious and dangerous than the Korthax Empire." Vexral felt a deep chill run through his entire body. If what the humans had openly demonstrated was merely a fraction of their true military capability, then his empire stood absolutely no realistic chance whatsoever in any prolonged conflict. They would be annihilated. "I will faithfully convey all of this critical information to the High Council he said with absolute sincerity. And I will strongly add my own personal recommendation that the Korthax Empire immediately establish peaceful diplomatic relations with Earth, if your people are willing to consider such an arrangement. We are always willing and ready to engage in diplomatic dialogue, Commander, Lisa said firmly. But you must understand this fundamental truth absolutely clearly. We will never again allow ourselves to be victims. We will never again be helpless in the face of external threats. Any civilization that approaches Earth with demonstrably hostile intent will be met with absolutely overwhelming force and zero mercy. The historical age of humanity being easy prey for stronger species is permanently over. We have claimed our rightful place among the powers of this galaxy, and we will defend that position with every available resource at our disposal. She paused for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the accumulated weight of 4,000 years of human determination, sacrifice, and unwavering resolve. You should tell your High Council very clearly that Earth has finally awakened after 4 millennia of patient preparation. Tell them that the descendants of the species they callously tried to destroy have become something they should genuinely fear. Tell them that if they sincerely want peace between our civilizations, we will offer it freely and without preconditions. But if they foolishly choose war instead, she deliberately left the dire threat unfinished. But the implications were abundantly clear to anyone listening. I understand completely, Admiral, Vex Ral said heavily. And for whatever small worth it may hold, I am personally and deeply sorry for what my distant ancestors did to your world 4,000 years ago. So am I, Commander, Lisa replied with visible emotion. But being sorry does not magically bring back the billion innocent people who died in that unprovoked attack. Being sorry does not erase 4,000 years of preparation, sacrifice, and the complete transformation of our entire civilization. Sorry is merely a word, nothing more. What truly matters are concrete actions and meaningful choices. How the Korthax Empire responds to this unprecedented situation will ultimately determine whether our two species have any realistic future as peaceful allies or as bitter enemies locked in conflict. I strongly suggest you and your leaders choose very wisely. The transmission ended abruptly, and Vexral found himself staring at an empty display screen. Around him on the bridge, his crew worked in heavy silence, all of them quietly processing the full implications of everything they had witnessed during this catastrophic mission. They had departed their home as confident conquerors, representing a mighty empire, and were now returning as humbled refugees, their lives mercifully spared by the very species they had arrogantly intended to exterminate without remorse. Sir, we have successfully crossed the heliopause boundary, the navigation officer reported in a subdued voice. We are now clear to safely engage our faster-than-light drives. Activate the drives immediately, Vexral ordered with weary resignation. Set our course directly for Korthax Prime at maximum possible speed. The High Council urgently needs to hear detailed reports about everything that has happened here. As the fleet's powerful drives began spinning up to full power, literally tearing controlled holes in the fabric of space-time through which they would escape this system, Vexral took one final long look at the human fleet behind them. The humans were not pursuing or making any kind of threatening moves toward the departing Korthax vessels. They simply watched with quiet vigilance, silent sentinels eternally guarding their precious homeworld, supremely confident in their overwhelming strength, and completely secure in the knowledge that they had successfully sent a message that would echo and reverberate across the entire galaxy for generations to come. The distant stars stretched and distorted dramatically as the faster-than-light drives fully activated, pulling the defeated Korthax fleet away from Earth and toward their distant home. But Vexarel knew with absolute certainty that no matter how far through space they traveled, the haunting memory of this disastrous encounter would stay with him forever. He had personally witnessed the dramatic birth of a genuinely new power in the galaxy, and he understood that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Several months later, after an exhausting journey home, Vexral stood nervously before the imposing Korthax High Council in the magnificent Grand Chamber on Korthax Prime. The assembled political and military leaders of the entire empire listened in increasingly shocked silence as he methodically delivered his comprehensive report. He described in precise detail the overwhelming strength of humanity's forces, the stunning sophistication of their advanced technology, And most importantly, the cold determination he had seen burning in Admiral Chen's eyes when she had mercifully sent them home with an unmistakable warning. This entire story is completely preposterous and unbelievable, Council Leader Zinrath declared loudly, his mandibles clicking in obvious agitation. A primitive species simply cannot achieve such radical advancement in merely 4,000 cycles. The timescale is physically impossible. I personally saw it with my own 4 eyes, Vexral replied firmly, refusing to back down. I watched their weapons completely disintegrate our most powerful battleships with single, devastating shots. I watched their advanced interceptors disable our fastest scout vessels as if they were nothing more than simple training exercises. I spoke directly with their commanding officers and clearly saw in their faces exactly what 4,000 years of dedicated preparation and sacrifice had created. They are no longer primitives struggling with basic technology, Council Leader. They have become apex predators of the highest order, and we have now become the vulnerable prey in this relationship. The council chamber immediately erupted into heated and chaotic debate. Some council members loudly demanded immediate, full mobilization of the entire Imperial Armada, stubbornly refusing to believe that primitives could possibly pose any genuine threat to the mighty empire. Others, who were considerably wiser, or perhaps simply more pragmatic, argued passionately for extreme caution and immediate diplomatic engagement, rather than military confrontation. The intense argument raged on for many hours, with no clear consensus or agreement emerging from the divided council. Finally, Vexral stepped forward once again with visible determination. Esteemed council members, please listen carefully. I fully understand this situation is extremely difficult to accept and process. I personally struggled greatly with it myself during the long journey home, but I must make one critical thing absolutely and perfectly clear to all of you. The enormous chamber fell into tense silence, with all attention focused on him. The humans consciously offered us genuine mercy, Vexral said with quiet intensity. They possessed both the overwhelming capability and full moral justification to completely destroy our entire fleet without any survivors, but they deliberately chose to send us home alive with a clear diplomatic message instead. That conscious choice demonstrates remarkable restraint and genuine wisdom on their part. However, they were also extremely clear and direct about what would inevitably happen if we returned to their territory with any hostile intent whatsoever. They will show us exactly the same degree of mercy we originally showed them 4,000 cycles ago, when our ancestors attacked their defenseless world, which is to say, absolutely none at all. He looked slowly around at the assembled leaders of the Empire, making direct eye contact with as many as possible. I strongly and urgently recommend we accept the uncomfortable reality of our current situation. Humanity has successfully claimed their rightful place in the galactic community through their own efforts. We can choose to recognize that new reality and actively seek peaceful diplomatic relations, or we can foolishly choose military conflict and face the very real possibility of complete extinction as a species. But make absolutely no mistake about this, honored council members. The choice of how to proceed is entirely ours to make. The humans have already made their choice crystal clear. They will defend their home with every single weapon in their vast arsenal, and their military capabilities far exceed anything we currently possess. The crucial vote that followed was definitely not unanimous, but it was nonetheless decisive in its outcome. The Korthax Empire would formally and permanently abandon all territorial claims to Earth's solar system, establish an official diplomatic communication channel for future peaceful interactions, and officially reclassify humanity as a peer civilization deserving of respect rather than a primitive species suitable for conquest. It represented a deeply humiliating reversal of many centuries of established imperial policy, but it was also ultimately about survival of the species. Back on Earth, in the bustling command center of Defense Station Vigilance, Captain Daniel Morrison stood watching the long-range sensor displays as the Korthax fleet finally disappeared into the infinite depths of interstellar space. Admiral Lisa Chen stood quietly beside him, with her arms crossed, her expression thoughtful and contemplative. "Do you honestly think they will ever return?" Daniel asked quietly. Lisa remained silent for a long moment, carefully considering the question. "Not with hostile intentions. I believe," Commander Vexrel genuinely struck me as intelligent enough to recognize when he was completely outmatched. He will faithfully deliver our message to his leaders, and the Korthax will eventually accept the new reality of the situation. But if they somehow do not... She gestured meaningfully toward the tactical display showing the massive human fleet, still maintained at full combat readiness. We will be absolutely ready for them. We have always been ready, Daniel said quietly, with deep conviction. For 4,000 long years, every single generation has been ready and waiting. I wonder what humanity does now, that we have prepared for so long. What does our civilization do when the existential threat we spent millennia preparing for has been decisively defeated? Lisa smiled genuinely, and this time the expression was warm and authentic. We do exactly what we have always done throughout our history. Captain, we explore the unknown. We continue to grow and develop. We build new things and expand our horizons. But we never, ever forget the painful lessons of what happens when we are unprepared for threats. The silent armada will remain permanently positioned in the void, constantly watching and patiently waiting, ensuring that Earth never again faces the possibility of extinction. Around them, throughout the solar system, the countless stations and powerful warships that had been painstakingly built over 4 millennia stood as eternal guardians of humanity. They represented humanity's solemn promise to itself that the age of being helpless prey was permanently and irrevocably over. The message had been sent successfully, not just to the Korthax Empire but to any other species anywhere in the galaxy that might consider threatening Earth in the future. Humanity had finally awakened from its long preparation, and the entire galaxy would never forget the lesson. Lisa's expression hardened like steel being tempered in fire. You will tell your High Council that Earth remembers everything, that we have neither forgiven nor forgotten what was done to us, that we spent 4,000 years transforming ourselves into the kind of civilization that can face existential threats like yours and emerge victorious. And most importantly, you will tell them that if any Korthax vessel ever approaches our territory again with hostile intent, we will not offer the option of surrender. We will show your people exactly the same mercy you showed our ancestors 4,000 years ago. The implications of her words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Vexral understood the message with perfect clarity. The humans were offering his species one final chance to avoid complete extinction, but only if the Korthax Empire possessed sufficient wisdom to accept this new reality and adjust accordingly. I will deliver your message faithfully, Vexral said with quiet sincerity. And I will personally recommend to the High Council that all territorial claims to this system be permanently and irrevocably abandoned. See that you do, Lisa said coldly. Because the next time our civilizations meet, Commander, it will not be us who find ourselves surrounded and outgunned. Signal our complete and immediate surrender, Vexral said quietly, his voice heavy with defeat. All ships are to power down weapons systems and drop shields immediately. No resistance. The bridge erupted in shocked protest from several officers, but Vexral raised a manipulator appendage for silence. We are military officers, not suicidal fools. We will survive to report what we have found here. The Empire needs to know the truth. Humanity is no longer prey. They have become the apex predator, and we walked blindly into their territory. On the display, Admiral Patterson nodded once, a small gesture that somehow conveyed both respect and absolute dominance. A wise decision. Commander, you just saved thousands of lives on both sides. Prepare to be boarded. Your ships will be secured and inspected. Follow our instructions exactly, and no one else needs to die today. As human ships began closing in around the trapped Korthax fleet, their movements precise and coordinated, Vexral sank heavily into his command chair. He stared at the view screen showing Earth in the distance, that blue-green world his ancestors had once attacked with impunity. He wondered how he would explain to the High Council that the primitive species they had tried to exterminate 4,000 years ago had become something they should fear. Yes, sir. Throughout the solar system, thousands of human ships shed their invisibility like predators emerging from darkness. The Korthax fleet, confident and arrogant in their approach, suddenly found themselves surrounded by an armada that dwarfed their numbers and outclassed their technology by centuries of advancement. The silence that had protected humanity was over. Now it was time for the aliens to hear humanity's voice. And it would be spoken in a language they would understand perfectly. The language of overwhelming force. The main display shifted to show their fleet's position. They were surrounded in 3 dimensions, boxed into a formation that had no exit. The human ships formed perfect patterns, each vessel positioned to attack from multiple angles. It was sophisticated military planning that took civilizations millions of years to develop. Impossible, Vexral whispered. The primitives barely had rockets. This level of coordination and technology takes forever to achieve, but the evidence was right in front of him. Undeniable and terrifying. Somehow, in just 4,000 years, the primitive species his ancestors had dismissed had become something far more dangerous. The hunt had begun, but the Korthax had become the prey.